The recording now, it would be the chain, say the chain meeting for August 24th, 2018. And we'd like to first thank our sponsors. That would be Blockhouse for their hard work and helping us with the legal and helping us with some of the expenses and helping us with the getting the project on track. Very, very important the work they've done, as well as the some of the early sponsors like the NSPE, National Society of Professional Engineers, who helped us get this launched to resurrect this project from an earlier project we did with them. So today we are a growing and vibrant community of engineers. And what's interesting here is if this project does get a little bit larger, this will be like one of the only times when the engineering community actually took a forward step and was speaking to the public. I mean, you just never hear this about an engineering group or an engineering society speaking directly to the public. We have as our motto, especially the NSPE, the motto is to safeguard the health and welfare of people and property. And you'll hear that coming out of the professional engineers all the time. In some form, that expression appears. But we don't actually interface directly with the public. So it's kind of hard to really marry that statement. I ran a business for a while where I was actually interfacing with the public, and it's really quite an amazing thing to be an engineer interfacing directly with the public, trying to solve their problems with their condominiums in the case of my last business, and the problems that they face dealing with contractors, and then there's the segmentation of the industry. They talking to the contractors, talking to the lawyers, talking to their own community, and then talking to an engineer, and being in that position was very, very enlightening, and it very much helped us to form a lot of the ideas of this business. So a little shout out to engineers and our willingness now to speak directly to the public. So last week we worked on a lot of the internal documents that are going to help us get to the TGE, which is a very long process, which involves us doing some soul searching, finding out, who's going to be the face of the campaign, who's going to speak certain things, what's going to be our mission statement, what's going to be our vision statement, what's going to be the roles or responsibilities, and what's going to be the communication process between everybody. The compensation plan is also another thing. How are we going to compensate ourselves? How are we going to compensate new members? So these are all things that we've been working on. They're not, I'm not going to go into detail so much for this meeting, but just to let everybody know, this is what the management team is, the directors team is working with. We've got a very large community of people who helped in the past, up to 60 other people that we have registered in a list of, I wouldn't say equity, but in a list of they're going to be compensated at the time that we liquidate, or at some event in the future where there's tokens generated or some benefit to be had, such as running a witness node or gaining advanced access to certain tokens and so forth. So there's a pretty large group of people that we're trying to accommodate. So these are very interesting and meaningful discussions. It's causing us to unify and become more of a group, more of a business, so to speak, and to get our house in order. We've had a lot of interesting things happen as well. We had we won another award for a submission of a it's a contest. It's for Block World out of San Jose, and that's Silicon Valley, and we won the category of best infrastructure. So they're looking for these things, such as infrastructure, such as solving these problems, these very large problems which fall into the engineering bailiwick. And I'm not sure whether we won it because we're just awesome, or whether we won it because we're the only engineering blockchain out there. In either case, that's probably pretty awesome. But it says that the people are looking for. We're coming to a convergence where people are actually looking for this solution. I've got several interviews next week with storytellers. People want to tell our story, or different blog posts or webcasts. And next week I'm speaking in Washington D.C. to the MIT Harvard Club. We have I mean, there we're going to be in another blockchain conference in September 15th here in Seattle, and then gosh, there's another one coming up. It slipped my mind, but we're getting a lot of attention now, or more attention than usual. And it's all very good attention. It's not just a little blogger or a little thing. These are large organizations. These are important organizations that are they're reaching out to what we're doing and who we are. Let me just scroll down a little bit. There are several things coming to becoming fairly obvious to us. We're becoming apparent. First is our self-utility our self-identity as a utility. I just want to talk about it in a very literal sense. We are a tool that can be used to transform things. So we're transformational in that we convert a set of ingredients from a situation from one situation from a lower state to a higher state. It's sort of like in B school they use the example of Starbucks. Starbucks uses 12 cents worth of coffee. They add some water, some heat, put it in an 8-cent cup, and then they sell it to you for $3. The value of the cup of coffee is not in the ingredients. It's in the transformation of those ingredients to that higher state. So this is what our mission is. This is what our job is coming out to be. So it's really interesting to be in that segment of a growth curve. Last week we also discussed our two legal entities. We have the Integrated Blockchain Consortium, which is a U.S.-based for-profit entity. Then we have the CoEngineers, which is the Swiss-based blockchain foundation and governance body. Swiss-based isn't quite settled yet, but the U.S.-based IEBC is now a corporation with an EIN number. We can take money, we can pay taxes. So this is a very important thing for us. So this week, the legal team also started working with equity distribution to directors. So we're talking about how we're going to, we have to distribute equity. We also to investors and directors. So we're all kind of in the same boat. So the legal team is also helping us in the fundraising. We're going to talk about the 10-5-5 initiative in a minute. But in order to do that, we have to have contracts. We have to make promises to potential investors or donator fundraising targets to the organization. So we have to have a contract out to them. So we've been working with legal to get those settled out. The thing that I want to probably spend most of the time today before we go to the individual group discussions is to talk about our big initiative right now this week is called the 10-5-5 initiative. Now, we mentioned it last week, but not anywhere near the detail that I'd like to discuss today. So what we're going to do is we're going to reach out into the community of whoever's out there and we're looking for 10 engineering firms, 5 banks, and 5 insurance companies. You know what? I think I'm going to post that right now. I think I should have done that. Let me pop it up in the VoIP channel in just a second. Give me a minute. I have it up in a second. Okay, there it is. It's in the VoIP channel. It's a more recent 10-5-5 initiative document. And this is just a draft only, but it's starting to get to how we're going to make the presentation, how we're going to make the pitch. We've added some not testimonials, but some things from like the U.S. General Services Administration and from Deloitte and some of the consultants out there. We have those quotes. They're sort of leaders to get people, sort of hype it up a little bit. And we're having this. We're pulling this inaugural group together, and what we want to so specific application of this project includes the project finance, insurance, engineering, and construction of infrastructure, smart cities, and sub-technologies related to the emergent digital twin of the physical world. So we're getting out there and starting to use these dog whistles and trying to get people attracted to what we're doing. So the organizations who join our inaugural members will be founding members, and they'll have access to our research. And then they'll have a front row seat to the development of the blockchain ecosystem. I won't read through this, but we're going to give them selective exclusive access, early mover advantage, new to the world data set, network knowledge, asset management, and frictionless liquidity. So we're starting to use these terms. So this is a little bit. It still needs some wordsmithing, but we're looking for some help with this. If everyone wants to work with us on this to get this dialed in a little bit better. So we have the construction and the finance and the insurance. This is based on the theory of EngTech, FinTech, and InsurTech. If you read the white paper, you would see that there's this virtuous circle between them. And what we're trying to do is get those three pieces to talk to each other, to understand that a bank won't lend money to a project that's not well engineered, and insurance company, the bank won't lend money to a project that's not insured. An insurance company won't insure a project that's not well engineered, and you can't do good engineering unless you have some financing to cover the soft costs. We're trying to, and then that kind of goes around a cycle. And we're trying to get that to be the pump of the value pump for the project. The things we're going to be delivering are the access to the discussion platform, which will be probably Discord. We'll be providing webinar series to the organizations who join us. They'll be participating in research and publishing with us, so they'll be able to publish with engineers and others who are experts in the subject, and then we can carry their name on as thought leaders in the world of blockchain. And so we'll be able to license the IBC name so that they get put on their corporate logo. There's all these different forces and things that they're trying to deal with, trying to demonstrate to their customers that they're on the path towards this new modern idea, but they don't really know how to get started. So we're going to offer them that opportunity to work with us. And at the end of the year, we want to have a conference. So everybody comes together at the end of the year, and we have this conference. So we're looking for organizations must be willing to dedicate senior staff, and this is something that we've learned. Senior staff tends to be very valuable in both their contribution and they're carrying the message onward to within their corporation, and again adding their own personal and valuable experience. We want active organizations, and they're going to agree to the IBC Constitution. There's some provisions that we've discovered that need to be in there, and they'll be accepted by interview and other things. So the idea here is that we're going to be requesting $100,000 from each. So we're going to try to raise $2 million. And last week we discussed the purpose of that money was to advance the TGE effort for the other side, as well as to continue building the business process. So the idea is to get the business process running and operating so that when we do the TGE, then it's really kind of a no-brainer and people just see something that works and something that's active, something that's moving, something that's investable. So that's the theory behind that. Let me get back to my other document, if I can find it in this mess. Okay, let's see. So that's our primary objective. If we can go to directors reports if you want right now, and then each of the directors will talk about what they're doing to to pull together the back end of how we're going to do all this. We've got the operations and then the marketing and the tech side and it's in the website and all the communications outbound. This is getting to be very, very complicated and a lot of fun. So one thing I would like to also emphasize is if you're new here or if you want to get involved, now is the best time to do it. We're publishing a lot of different vectors for getting in on Advantage. So I don't know exactly how to say that without, I'm not even sure what laws govern us, but we hope that your time here working with us, we intend that your time here working with us is going to be beneficial to you in both a professional and hopefully a financial manner. It's going to be contingent on your producing stuff, obviously, but there's going to be, there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of opportunities to benefit from this project being successful. So we're inviting more people to join us and help out with some of the tasks that are kind of overflowing a lot of folks now in this company. So with that, do we want to start with operations? Is Marcus here today?
Marcus is not able to attend right now. He's at it. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Alicia, do you want to talk about a marketing campaign? I guess she's on mute right now. Michelle, do you and Daryl want to talk about the tech side?
We'd be happy to. Daryl and I, this past week, have been working together to deploy the chain over to a smaller group of testers. Well, actually, a larger group of testers. And we're currently in the middle of that process. And so far going well, and we think it will just be a few more days to get it completely open for our select group of testers. Daryl, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate any additional items?
I think you pretty much just got it. As far as the information side is, we're just trying to create structures in which we can share information better. So that's what we constantly working on.
So I know it doesn't sound like very much, but it really is a whole lot. Where they are in right now with the blockchain is it took a lot to get here, and it's a lot of work trying to get to what we need to accomplish. And I know the report's really short, but I also know that there's a lot of work involved with what they've done. So we're really looking forward to seeing what we have when this rolls out, and then so much more can be said once that's up and running, and we're all looking at it and poking at it. So I'm looking forward to that immensely.
Yeah, sorry for keeping it short, but often there's a lot of technical aspects which often are not interesting to other people. So just keeping it short.
Yeah, and there's better forums for that as well. We're just kind of developing this one here. This is the outbound report to everybody. Eventually, this will be opened up to the world. I don't think we have too many new people here today. We haven't seen Hayden Galt in a while, but thanks for coming, Hayden Galt. I think it's a good time to be working with you in distribution of content and so forth. Thomas, do you have anything to say about operations?
Well, sales. Remember, I'm the sales director. I think that this week's sales report, should emphasize that we are trying to marketing to make sure that we are lockstep on message. And a lot of that message that we've been developing so far is targeted to engineering firms. We can do that. We are discovering that there's a lot of new awareness out there among firms and other major actors such as the U.S. federal government, that there's this idea that in blockchain there's momentum that's shifting, and that we are moving towards sort of a breakout moment. So blockchain's not quite ready for prime time, but it's getting closer to its breakout moment every day. So that's an important thing for people active in this industry to be aware of, and also the idea that there is a greater awareness of what Deloitte refers to as emerging disruptors. So that's a lot of attention. Our one of our target audiences in the 10-5-5 consortium model is, of course, large AEC firms and enterprises, and all of the 10-5-5 are large enterprises. Stuff that's happening with what Deloitte calls emerging disruptors are really coming from grassroots type movements and startups and independent initiatives that nevertheless are going to have a very powerful impact on enterprises. And the idea that enterprises should pay attention to what they're doing and maybe meet them halfway to harness what these startups are going to be presenting here in the coming months. And that's essentially what we are. We are sort of an emerging disruptor in a traditional industry, engineering and architecture. And it's what we're doing is something that we need to talk to large architect, engineer, construct firms to sort of reframe their own operational paradigm. Which, if you take engineering firms, for example, they are essentially knowledge management organizations. They don't realize it yet, but that's really what they are at the core of it. They manage engineering knowledge assets, and their whole operational paradigm is getting the right talent to the right place in a way that is not unreasonably expensive. It's a constant struggle that never ends to do that. And if you don't manage that operational paradigm well enough, you begin to get very close to insolvency or becoming a takeover target, which is what's really been happening in the AEC industry over the last 30 years. Everyone has been taking over everyone else. And it's largely because there are some firms that manage this knowledge management problem better than others, and they are able to win more work, they're more competitive, and they are healthier. They have stronger cash. They can go out and make those acquisitions. But the time of acquisitions is probably coming to a not to a halt, but it's slowing down, and it won't be. It will soon become the ground level strategy, whereas the higher level is to actually look at this knowledge management paradigm itself and start addressing it with technology. What we are offering to large engineering firms, really a front row seat in the development of an ecosystem that spans a huge global market. Global infrastructure is sometimes estimated as high as $8 trillion a year, and that's an estimate that we see from brick and mortar ventures that Darren Bechtel runs. $8 trillion a year is just new greenfield construction. It's a giant industry that we hope to connect through the engineering profession, and using blockchain technology and AI. The offer that's very important is exclusive access to a community of blockchain developer talent, which is dedicated to engineering and infrastructure. Often consider a lack of blockchain developer talent as the largest stumbling block to actually moving ahead and doing anything with it. The IBC and CoEngineers and membership in a consortium to develop CoEngineers, fitting large engineering firms in that they would have an early mover advantage in being able to safely disrupt themselves in a constructive way, safe sandboxing of this new idea of networked corporate organization, core of future operations. AEC firms, many times, they try to solve their knowledge asset liquidity crisis by just digging further into their own organization and trying to connect their employees better by trying to create a roster of skill sets. And that is one way to do it, but we really have to challenge that assumption, because it's really the wrong direction that they're going in trying to solve this knowledge liquidity crisis.
Can I ask you a question, Thomas?
They should actually be looking outside of their firms to knowledge, pure knowledge, as information wherever it can be sourced. And there's some real evidence that even the U.S. federal government is beginning to understand that principle, that movement from hierarchical, traditional structures to more networked structures that reach out cross industry is something that's likely to happen in the future because of blockchain technology. So first mover advantages from this come about because networks, once they're developed, are very resilient, and those founders which have participated in the creation of networks, and we've looked at several examples such as Lloyd's of London, such as the Bloomberg terminal, which I'm not going to repeat this morning, but they're excellent examples of how networks have connected people peer-to-peer, many-to-many, and once those networks exist, they are resilient. They're not vulnerable to things like insolvency, and they last forever. So whoever is involved in those types of structures stands to benefit from an enormous first mover advantage. So that's another that we're trying to get through, especially to AEC firms, as we help them also reframe their pain points around the lack of talent and the shortage of talent that they're experiencing.
One of the things that I'm coming across is this, our approach is so different than the way that they're going about it now. I mean, some of the companies I've already worked with, they've got this very bizarre quarterly mentality. If it's not showing up on the quarterly metrics, it just doesn't get measured. It doesn't exist. And they're also working from the top down, and they're trying to, like pushing on a string, trying to get this thing to move, and then they're disappointed. So there obviously isn't anything there if they can't make it happen. Whereas our approach is to really get down to the granular subset. What is that one unit interaction between two engineers, between myself and yourself, that moment where we exchange some value, and then you add value from your set of experience to that, and then you pop it back to me, and then there's another exchange. So this rapid fire exchange, millions and millions of times a day, happens between engineers, and that's sort of like the substrate of what you're looking for. You're looking for, talent is really nothing more than a series of correct decisions, or rapid fire, something that comes fast and that has a very low input for very high output. And things like that. So our approach is so radically different, and we're using blockchain to do that, to build this sub-unit, this unit business model, and something that can be replicated millions and millions of times, which is what a blockchain is able to do, is bring scale to these little tiny events. But unless they're being done in aggregate, they're invisible. So how do we, how are they reconciling with that? Do they actually know what they're looking for? Do they know that it exists in these granular pieces, or do they expect it to come out of, somebody's, what are they expecting? Do you have any insight? Because again, we're trying to bridge the gap between where we are and where they are. There seems to be still a lot of light in between those two positions. How do we close that gap?
Right. Well, one of the things we can offer to close that gap is really the unique insights into the industry and how it's going to be transforming in the presence of this new emerging technology. And I think that it's a wonderful position to be in, because once you understand how the technology works and what it can do with the unit process of how engineering and architectural knowledge is exchanged, the way that it actually it moves back and forth. There's a supply and a demand for engineering knowledge. And the way that engineering firms are managing that today, really, again, puts the focus on the individual, on the people, through human resources and through hierarchical management. I mean, you look at a group of engineers, and of course, they're all supported not just by engineers, but there are a lot of technical people who have enormous technical expertise that are all working together, much like an army. Mm-hmm. And it's really a people thing, when in fact, knowledge assets are pure information, and pure information is best managed by information technology. The people from the information assets, from the knowledge assets themselves, all the while remembering that we're still a company made up of people, but by finding knowledge assets wherever and whenever they are, and focusing on the unit business process that's happening from person to person, peer to peer, many to many, and then harnessing that in, given the nature of the supply and the demand for that knowledge. So, just one word about the practical initial startup application that we're focusing on is a kind of marketplace for micro work, engineering deliverables. But it's more than that. We're not just a marketplace for engineering deliverables. We're actually a platform for producing them. Everything that engineers and architects do can be delivered in a technical memorandum format, in a tech memo. The publishing platform that we have permits all kinds of, it permits dragging and dropping of formulas that you create in Microsoft Equation Editor. It permits linking to files off-chain at GitHub or in Google Docs, like PDF files, plans, schematics. Every single thing that engineers do when they communicate with each other can be achieved on CoEngineers.io, which is an engineering work platform as well as a marketplace at the same time. And if you address the micro work that's done in small pieces, and you can build, proposals, feasibility studies, standard operating procedures from all these pieces that can be put together. But the granularity, Dan, that you referred to is what is unique. We're actually studying the fundamental, the atomic transactions that happen at that level to deliver engineering work. They're done one task at a time, one micro task at a time. Again, by establishing a marketplace for this, as well as a platform, you connect every single engineer and architect in the world to every other single engineer and architect in the world. And that network that you have then creates new value that has never existed before. Engineering knowledge assets are locked up in silos. Those silos are often created by all kinds of silly things. If I want, for example,
we can't hear you.
Won't get done because an engineering department, a division, a company is still busy pursuing that big $10 million consulting job or design job. They won't address things like that. Yet that's work that actually needs to be done. So we are addressing a need on a very practical level. But at the same time, there's a lot more to this. We're actually talking about the monetization of the value of engineering to society, which is what eventually this could become. But on the micro level, using tokens as nucleation points for the accumulation of value, these tech memos, this micro work that's being generated, it could be something as simple as helping a kid in school with a trig problem. The quality of engineering deliverables will increase because as it increases, the token value will increase, which will further incentivize the quality of the work. So we're trying to build an engineered virtual cycle that builds on itself. So it's almost like a Bitcoin type startup phenomenon, but it's based entirely on a proof of brain, which is, again, I don't want to get to the technical part of it because that's Michel's territory. But proof of brain, of course, is not a consensus for generating blocks. It's simply a consensus mechanism for generating ownership of digital tokens, of a stake in the chain. And, we believe that is as long as it rests on the solid bedrock, which engineering indisputably represents, we have confidence that we can start this and start a liquid market for engineering knowledge assets.
So well, the next challenge,
it's difficult to articulate all of that in the context of seeking consortium memberships, but we believe that enterprises, engineering firms in particular, as well as banks and insurance companies, will all have a stake in engineering and infrastructure. But engineering firms in particular, the value proposition, what we're proposing to them, to mention that it's simply we're talking about participation in an incubator and an accelerator and an innovation exchange, which allows everyone, employees of large enterprises, to engage in a true culture and vernacular of what's really the leading edge of the tech community. So that in itself is an incredible opportunity. It's pretty much some of the things that we've been crystallizing with marketing over the last week in preparation of our 10-5-5 campaign. Sales report right there.
So the curation is another issue. It's not going to be like a standard index or table of contents. If you want to go and find some information about something, it's not going to be your standard ontology.
Back to you, Dan.
Oh yeah, you can't hear me? I'm just going to close down some different channels.
I have audio issues. Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello? Okay, I'm going to fall off for a second.
Dan, I can hear you.
Can anybody else hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dan. No problem.
Okay, so I think it's when I'm on looking at the YouTube screen, it blocks out this channel. So we're just learning. I guess the point that I was trying to make is the curation of such a database. It's not going to come in the form of a ontology or this category of electrical engineering. You'll find that information about load balancing and so forth. It's going to come more in terms of a network. Whereas, instead of going through an ontology, which is many, many layers deep, in which case you'll get lost and never find anything. If you try to curate things in the traditional sense, the idea here is that you would find an individual who would know where that information is. And by following their transaction record, you can actually find the information in the body of knowledge. So we're attaching a lot to so we're curating individuals as much as we're curating knowledge. What I've seen a lot of is businesses tend to try to not do that. They want to own everything, and they can't own an individual, so they try to own their knowledge in the form of IP, or they try to own their knowledge in the form of rights or sequestration of that individual from being accessed by others, and so forth. What do you think are going to be maybe the anthropological hurdles when we go tell a Bechtel, hey, do you mind if we go talk to your structures guy a little bit? We got this problem here at Jacobs we need to try to find an answer to. How are we going to bridge that gap, get past the old world way of thinking, the old isolated silos, and the tendency to do that with our device? And I'm running into this all the time. Like there's one company who won't even talk to us unless we're on their specific blockchain platform. If we're not on the same architecture, then there's just no box to put us in. It's not like we're faulting them. It's just they don't have a place for us if it's not in the thing they've already got in place. So these are questions that we're going to have to eventually hit in the sales campaign, and maybe Malachy can help us out with this a little bit. But what's your interpretation of that, Thomas?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because there are two important things to remember when somebody says, well, what are you suggesting? That we simply open up our proprietary advantages, our core assets to the world and give them away? What kind of strategy is that? It sounds incredibly risky. It sounds disruptive in a bad way. So what are you suggesting? The idea is, first of all, to understand that nothing's going to happen overnight. This is little by little in a very slow pace, or let's put it this way, not slow, but gradual as you want it to be. You can start out with, and in fact, you can't even stop it. Once the phenomenon begins, nothing can impede the right of one engineer to ask a peer, another engineer, a purely technical question. I mean, imagine the scenario of two individuals who went to the same university, graduated the same year. They're still in touch with each other. They majored in the same subject. They want to ask each other a question. You can't really very well stop them. I mean, I don't think it's ethical to say that you can't do that. So you can ask another person a question. And this can begin with two engineers, eventually four, and eventually 8, and then more. And it's not like we're talking about disrupting the hierarchical traditional classical structure overnight. We're talking about very gradually having people rely on each other for information. But you can control that however gradually you want. And the idea is that the proprietary advantage, well, where does it go? It's not disappearing, because first of all, you are sharing really commodity type, purely engineering type subject matter. I mean, obviously, during a bid, you wouldn't want to be competing, you wouldn't want to be communicating with a competitor and giving away sensitive information. Loose lips sink ships. And certainly you don't want to give away trade secrets and proprietary things. If there's a firm that's particularly good at designing refineries, you don't want to be giving away that advantage to another firm. But at the same time, a new kind of proprietary activity is beginning. You are cultivating and curating strands of knowledge. You're learning how to harness a body of knowledge that's out there in unique and proprietary ways. Again, remember, we already are knowledge management firms to begin with. But if you separate the people from the knowledge and look at knowledge as pure raw stuff and begin to manage it as the pure information that it is, there's a whole fractal design of how the information gets put together that can become proprietary. How people utilize an integrated engineering body of knowledge depends on, there are many different ways of doing that, and it becomes a new source of proprietary advantage. The Google of AEC is going to be bigger than Google. Be no Google if there were no telecommunications and plastics and electronics and roads and water and sewage. So that's what we're trying to basically to help our clients reframe their operational, what's at the core of their operations, to understand really how to address the main dragon that they're struggling with all the time.
Did you make up that quote on Google, or did that come from Deloitte or somebody?
That was my quote. I sent it to you yesterday in written form, and I know that you put it in part of the 1055 document, but that's actually my own quote, and it comes from things that you've discussed and we've discussed here.
Are there any questions from anybody? We're gonna probably wrap it up. I'm not sure how you felt about today's State of the Chain. There's so many things going on. It's just so hard to pull it all together without a lot of preparation, which I did not have the time to do. But it's always interesting to get into one of these topics, because this is a very important project, very important problem for us to solve. Is how do we bridge this communication gap? How do we get this larger idea into the mainstream? How do we communicate it to people in a way that activates them? Everybody's looking at it differently. They're looking at it from their point of view, from their node on the network, and our success is going to be in building that network and getting that network to talk to itself. The purpose of a network is to find each other. Okay, so that's why we have these discussions. Are there any questions that we could answer, or something we could put on the agenda for next week that need to get attended to, stuff that people want to hear about?
Yeah, I'd kind of like to just do a little sandboxing or trial, or got several projects that might be kind of fun. I know that there's the work that was done in Steemit and all that. So We don't have to do one next week, but I think it'd be to try something like that out initially. Got a few things to try.
Well, that's going to be our test program. I think our first run through is to test the chain, but then we're going to need those projects that you're talking about, Bradley, some of the projects you're involved with, and start rolling those out as tests.
Okay. Do we have a timeline or a schedule? I don't know. Pages somewhere.
We actually are writing the roadmap now. We get some feedback there.
Okay. Oh, I'll turn mine off.
Are we so Michelle and Daryl, are we signing up? Are we? What am I trying to say? Are we giving out passwords already, or when is the window to actually do that? Because I've got at least 5 people lined up who would like to participate in testing.
Oh, excellent. So if you send either to me or to Daryl the list of individuals and also their requested account names, we are queuing those up. And once we have all of the various layers ready to go, we will send out the initial passwords to those individuals.
Okay, so I guess you need emails, and you probably just need an email address for the person and their desired account name.
Email will work, and also alternatively, if they have an account, for example, on Discord, we can message them directly there, or some alternative means. Probably written will be easier for these initial passwords.
Okay, so the director group here at the directors group, we've got a lot of things to get under the wire before the testing starts. And so we've got the compensation package. You need to give me some feedback on that. We've got the some of the other details on the show me the money document. A lot of that's almost done. If we can just get to that this week, because we really want to clear our plates for when when the technology goes live, because we're going to deep dive. We're going to go into it and start having these discussions. What does one mass mean? What does this tech bulletin contain? How much, these are so we have to, in order to clear our plates for that, we got to get the other things out of the way. So you know what those are, and we're talking about them during the weekly meetings. So let's finish those up. And if anybody wants to get more involved, please contact us. We need help in marketing. We need help in I'm not sure about operations, but especially marketing, to get some of these communications out, to keep the feed going, to keep the slow burn on, because we're having tremendous success. People are coming to us. Important people are coming to us. And so we have to keep that going, because when everything comes together, it's going to be a bit of a tornado. It's going to be a convergence. That's all we know. Is all the pieces are going to come together at once, and we just need to be ready for that.
Do you mind if I make a few announcements?
Oh, sure, absolutely. I'm sorry, Alicia.
Okay, no, you're fine. I'm sorry. I had to hop into a quick call earlier. So I just wanted to say a few things about conferences. If anybody knows of any conferences that are going to be October, November, that would be good. Anything at the very, very tail end of September, what I'm doing right now is just reaching out to different groups and individuals that are hosting conferences that really fit the feel and the purpose of what we're doing here. So, for example, there is one in Richmond, Virginia, that will be focusing on engineering and blockchain, and is actually being hosted by the School of Engineering. And so that's a perfect one. So I will be talking to them today. But my hope is that either Dan or Thomas can speak at that, or somehow or another CoEngineers can get involved with that. But in doing that, also communicating with different student groups, because I think that's going to be important moving forward. So if there's a particular university or school in your area that is just kind of really involved in the community, or you think that they may be good for what we're doing, you could pass over a direct contact or an individual or the name of the student org or somebody that and I will kind of follow through with that from there. but it will help us if we continue to connect to different student orgs. And then something myself and Marcus did earlier this week was go to meetup.com in our prospective localities and look up different meetup groups that were based around blockchain. So for example, in Richmond, there are about 5, and 2 or 3 of them have 300 plus members. So those would be some of the groups that either myself and or Daryl would go and speak at, but then also if Dan happens to be in DC, the first week of September, then it only makes sense to reach out to one of those meetup groups that has 300 plus members and say, hey, this gentleman will be speaking in the area. And I can also have him, show up to your meeting to speak to your group as well, to bring you some content and bring some value and experience to what your group has to offer. So that's something that we're doing. So any different meetup groups, if you guys hear about some, or you have meetup groups in your area and maybe you want to speak at, or maybe you don't necessarily want to speak, but you want to present what CoEngineers is doing, that would be awesome. And we can figure out a way to stream, Dan, Thomas, Michelle, or whoever wants to speak to that group. We can figure out a way to stream it or have them show up. But we want to be able to kind of meet people on the ground as well as online. So in transitioning from conferences, student groups, and meetups, social media streams. So if you're not following all of our social media channels, I would encourage everybody to follow us. Our main handle is @CoEng Blockchain. So that's what it is across the board. But if you look at the associated information, it will, and in an expanded form, say CoEngineers Blockchain. And so if you look at the bottom of this live streaming video, maybe 2 seconds after we close it, I will have all that information there. But if you look at last week's video on YouTube, which is August 17th, right under there will be all of the associated information that you will need to click around on those links. And very soon, as they've mentioned, we're doing the 10 5x5 initiative. We will also have available different coin receive addresses. So whether it's Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ether, that you just want to share with the group just to help us in any way possible, that would be super. We are just doing some fundraising in terms of just consortium memberships. But for any individuals who's not necessarily going to be a consortium member, but they want to assist us in any way, small or large, then you will be able to drop off different tokens to us, and that would be greatly appreciated. And then those things are not going into the pockets of the group, but those things will be going directly to building the effort. So if we're getting outside help to help us make things happen faster, that's what that would be going towards. In terms of support for marketing, we do need content creators. So if anybody loves to write, if they like to share information, if they have a large group of followers and influencers in the engineering and tech space, and they want to provide different content to them that is of value, then we will be able to give you content that you can then distribute to your groups. So then we also have a marketing Discord channel. And if you are listening to this on YouTube, I would advise you to join the IEBC Discord channel just so you can get involved with the group. And then when we have these State of the Chains, you can kind of be on the back end as well as watching from the front end. But you can also have access to the CoEng marketing server. And the CoEng marketing is pretty much where we just all throw our ideas out there, have fun, and build onto content and just help each other get this information out. So that is encouraged. If you have any marketing bone in your body, to join us, that would be super cool. And then in terms of sales, we are going to be focusing on helping Sales and Thomas create different sales assets that will appeal to the different target audiences that we have going forth. So if anybody has ideas or would like to assist in that area, that would be super. And the last thing is, if anybody knows any young individuals who are looking for internships, whether they're engineering students or they're marketing students, they could be business entrepreneurship students. Send them our way, because we need internships, or we need interns, and we have a lot of work and experience that we can provide them with. So that's my spiel, and we're 10:01. We're a little bit over, so I'm done.
Thanks a lot. And, it's hard for our position to say, look, we'll pay you for doing something. It's kind of almost, you have to understand what we're doing is so enormous, and the value is so magnificent that there's going to be something in it for anybody who's doing it. So, and we're just opening up the can of worms, and we can't contain it. It's going to just blow up. So we need to have that intrinsic motivation, somebody who wants to build something cool, interesting in their own aspirations, and this being the substrate for them to do it is probably the biggest motivational force we can ask for. So if you know people out there, please bring them on and help us.
Yeah, I agree, especially in terms of students and those who are just looking to gain experience hands-on, because again, like as Thomas mentioned, this is at the cusp of something really new, and it's completely transforming a variety of different industries. And so as we are moving closer to that, I think that there's a lot to gain from somebody who may be either new to an industry or kind of walking into an industry or crossing over into a new industry. This would be a very fertile playground for them to exist in. So I agree.
Guys, you guys are getting good. I mean, you're Thomas and your talks are better than mine. Anyway, thank you very much for attending State of the Chain. I'll be hanging around for a bit of an after party afterwards. Let me know if there's any comments. This was a little bit different than last week. We're working on programming. What's this program supposed to do and accomplish? We're taking input on everything right now. So thanks a lot, everybody, and appreciate you coming.
Thank you.